Patagonia is a region in the southernmost portion of South America. It includes the Andes mountain range and the wide plains that stretch out beneath the plateaus. Steam locomotives run through this wild expanse of nature. Known to the world as the Old Patagonian Express, local people call it La Trochita, meaning little gauge in English. The narrow separation of only 75 centimeters between its rails is about half that of regular train tracks. Inside, the coach is so narrow, a person with outstretched arms can almost touch both walls. Visitors come from all over the world to see the striking landscape the train traverses. More than anything else, La Trochita reminds one of the tiny trains one rides in an amusement park. Yet in spite of its size, this little locomotive can take you on a magnificent Patagonian journey. The mountain town Esquel is located in southern Argentina's province Chubut. It is a popular resort for summer vacationers and winter skiers. About 100,000 tourists visit here every year, many hoping to ride the Patagonian Express's La Trochita. La Trochita is getting ready to roll. It's incredible. Men are pushing the turntable around. Only a little engine like La Trochita makes such a feat possible. La Trochita runs twice a day, at 9 in the morning and at 2 in the afternoon. A 2-hour round trip costs about $15. The visitors are not only from Argentina, many are also from Europe and the United States.
It's great. The people of this region have preserved this type of transportation. It helps us to connect with the past.
Plus, it promotes tourism for our country and shows the world that Argentina has extraordinary natural beauty.
Where I come from, in Germany, and in nearby Austria and Switzerland, we have a lot of interesting trains in the mountains. But this narrow gauge is unique in all the world.
La Trochita is ready to start. Presently, the Patagonian Express is able to run all the way between Esquel and El Maiten, a distance of about 160 kilometers. However, normally, it only runs to the next stop, Nauelpan. The train is approaching a hill. In spite of its small body, La Trochita generates over 400 horsepower and can reach speeds up to 65 kilometers per hour. Indeed, it's a tough little engine. It normally runs at a speed of only 20 kilometers per hour in order to provide the passengers with a peaceful view of a magnificent landscape.
Es una canción de enamorado, así que se la vamos a dedicar a algún enamorado que vaya en el vagón.
Sí los hay.
¿Hay alguno no? Para dedicar. Sí, está salvado. Ah, está salvado el vagón. Sí, bueno.
Singers on board introduce folk songs that have been passed down for generations by the indigenous Mapuche people. The music gives passengers another view of Patagonian life. It has been a 45-minute ride. We now arrive at the next station, Nauelpan. After a 30-minute stop, the train returns to Esquel. Currently, there are over 35,000 passengers that ride La Trochita each year. This is the maintenance facility for La Trochita in El Maiten. There are a total of 4 Trochita trains in service for the Patagonian Express. All of them were manufactured over 80 years ago. This Trochita was manufactured in the United States in 1922. It is 13 meters long and 3 meters high, about half the size of regular trains. This small steam locomotive has a special feature. Here is a counterweight that is used to make the wheels run smoothly. Normally, these weights are located inside of the wheels, but La Trochita was designed with its counterweights on the outside. Located on both sides, this makes the small train well balanced. The rare Trochita steam locomotives use parts from scrapped trains for repairs.
Ahí.
The tools used to make repairs are also old, some of them as old as 100. Why was La Trochita designed so small? Narrow gauge railroads came into use in Europe during World War I. Small temporary rails were laid in a hurry to carry troops and military supplies. When the Argentinian government decided to develop Patagonia with livestock farming, they chose the narrow gauge. Because of its cheaper construction materials, this enabled the railroad to be extended the 400 kilometers to Esquel. The construction proved to be very difficult, and it took 23 years to complete. The first engine arrived in Esquel in 1945. At the time, there were only a few families living in Esquel, but the area developed steadily. Most of the railroad workers who helped build the Patagonian Express system were from northern Argentina. At its peak, a crew of 10,000 worked here.
La comunicación con los pueblos. Acá se formaron pueblos, se formaron lugares donde pasaba el tren. Había cuadrillas enteras de gente que se encargaba de la reparación de las vías, lo que se le llama catango. Y, por ejemplo, el Bolsón creció por la Trochita y Esquel igual.
Sí, porque toda la mayoría de los materiales todo se transportaba por trencito.
Claro.
Todo por trencito. Y acá quedó cuánta gente quedó las cuadrillas que habían todo hasta Yacobasi, que después ya se eliminó la salida de trencito y desapareció, era como un pueblito.
Yo vine de la provincia de Buenos Aires, no conocía la nieve, le tenía terror al frío, pero digo yo, teníamos un artículo que nos beneficiaba. Nosotros veníamos por 2 años y si no nos gustaba podíamos volver al punto de residencia, ¿cierto? Pero me gustó y me quedé, pero era...
Sí.
En aquel tiempo.
Y toda la gente de la provincia cuando venía acá, se le hacía duro cuando llegaba el invierno, para ellos.
The prosperity of the Patagonian Express didn't last long. After the 1970s, the main means of cargo transportation switched to trucking. In 1993, the Patagonian Express was finally closed down. Remnants of settlements dot the sides of the railroad. Majoko Station is one of them. Once there were 50 people living here. The station once provided water to steam locomotives. Pedro Morales was born in this village and lived here with his family until he was 16 years old. Even now, he comes back to visit occasionally.
I was born here in this house in 1958. There were 7 families here, each with 7 or 8 kids. We all did our primary school in a little schoolhouse over there.
Acá en esta escuela, hasta que después quedaron alrededor de 8 chicos y se cerró la escuela. Entonces, ya el camino...
In the end, there were only 8 kids, so the school closed down.
Después se hizo el asfalto allá arriba.
The main road, Route 40, used to come as far as here, and if you wanted to go further, there was no way to get to Esquel. except by train.
Although La Trochita was initially closed down, the local government revived it 2 years later. In 1999, it was designated a historical landmark by the state government, and now it's so famous that people from all over the world come to visit. Every February, there is a steam locomotive festival celebrating La Trochita. The villagers revel until late into the night, with a concert featuring music praising La Trochita. It was the local people's affection for La Trochita that saved the railroad from extinction.
Sí.
It is only during the Steam Locomotive Festival that La Trochita runs the full 160 kilometers between El Maiten and Esquel. The workers take special care preparing for this annual event. The people hoping to take part in today's special train ride crowd the station. Some have even spent a night camping out in tents. Most of today's passengers are locals. It is a 5-hour trip to Esquel. Now the special railroad journey that happens only once a year has finally begun. After leaving El Maiten, the train runs through the magnificent plains of the Andean foothills. La Trochita rolls along slowly. The dining car is crowded today. The special on today's menu is a popular chocolate cake. 2 hours into the journey, La Trochita stops. It is time to refill the water tank. There is no station nearby, so the crew must pump water from a river. La Trochita's tanks are filled with melted snow water from the Andes Mountains. After the 20-minute stop, La Trochita begins to roll again. The terminal station Esquel is 100 kilometers away. Just as it did a half-century ago, the little steam locomotive La Trochita once again winds its way through the picturesque landscape of Patagonia.
看清世界，欣赏真实。北京电视台纪实高清频道。
Paraguay, a subtropical country in South America. Here, the oldest railroad in South America still runs. This is one of the rarest steam locomotives in the world. Amazingly, it is fueled by wood power. Presently, it operates only once every 2 weeks. It is always packed with tourists. There is even a theater group that works exclusively for the railway, performing songs and plays on board to entertain the passengers. Today, we will take you on a relaxing train trip in Paraguay. The Paraguay River runs through the capital city of Paraguay, Asunción. About 500,000 people live here. This is the center for government and business in this agricultural nation. Asunción has a long history. In the 16th century, the Spanish established a colony here that became a hub for South American expeditions and drew much prosperity. The Paraguay Railway runs through what are now the suburbs of Asunción. This railroad was built in 1861. In fact, it was the first railroad ever built in South America. The steam locomotive presently chugging on this line was manufactured in Scotland in 1910. It is on average 16 meters long and weighs 115 tons. However, the distinctive character of this train is that it runs on wood power. The idea behind using wood was that at the time of manufacture, there seemed to be an inexhaustible supply of the material in the forests. While any type of wood can be used, it has to be dried for over a month and cut into 1-meter strips to fit in the boiler. There is another unique feature. By using steam power, the generator provides light in the cabins. The Botanico station is located 10 minutes by car from the city. This is the starting point of the Paraguay Railway. The tourist train runs once every 2 weeks on Sundays. The distance to its final destination is 20 kilometers, and a round trip takes a whole day. The fare is about $18, but the locals pay a special rate of $5, which makes the train very popular. There is another reason for the popularity of this train. There are 25 actors and actresses working exclusively for the railway. They perform a variety of songs and plays on board. Today's program is a period piece.
Vamos a ver una recreación de hechos y situaciones de la independencia del Paraguay. Así que por favor vamos a mirar esta recreación. Y una vez más, muchas gracias por venir y bienvenidos.
Before the train's departure, they perform the first act. They reenact Paraguay's declaration of independence upon victory in the war against the Spanish colonialists.
Debemos fomentar la pública prosperidad y el bienestar de todos los habitantes del Paraguay. En suma, ¿qué forma de gobierno debemos adoptar para el Paraguay?
10 a.m. It is time for the journey to start. One crew member boards in front. He is called a switchman and has the important job of ensuring the safety of the trip. Along the railroad, there are no railroad crossing barriers. Thus, the switchman warns the engine driver to stop the train if he sees any danger. Inside of the cabin, the theater group creates a cheerful atmosphere by performing lively music and dancing. Upon driving for some time, the peaceful subtropical scenery starts to unfold. The people who live along the tracks also wait to see the steam locomotive pass, because it only runs once every 2 weeks. After 30 minutes, the train arrives at the next station, Luque. At this time, the second act of the performance starts, using the platform as the stage. The theme of this act is the war that was waged to expand Paraguayan territory 50 years after they gained their independence. The protagonist is the president-dictator of that era, Francisco Solano López, a notorious figure in Paraguayan history.
La guerra no puede durar mucho. Y si la patria se salva, todo estará salvado. Pero si ella cae, yo caeré con ella. Emiliano, querido Emiliano, tengo que darte consejo. Quizás los últimos.
Actually, it was President López who was the real driving force behind the establishment of the railroad in Paraguay, the first in South America. Francisco Solano López was the third president of Paraguay. When Paraguayans remember him, they invariably think of his beautiful companion, Elisa Lynch. Paraguay obtained independence earlier than other South American countries and prospered through trade with Europe. It was during this economic boom that the plan to construct a railroad emerged. Francisco Solano López's father was the preceding president, and he ordered his son to go to Europe to inspect the railroads. In Paris, López met a beautiful girl, Elisa. Elisa came to Paraguay with López, where she later had a big influence on the nation's politics. Francisco Solano López succeeded his father as president. Elisa received all his affections and started to behave as if she were the official First Lady. She lived a life of luxury, consuming only the best of everything. It is said that she also had an influence on the design plans for the railroad. The best engineer was invited from England, and he brought engines that employed the most advanced technology at the time. Thus, the first railroad in South America opened in Paraguay. This is the central station in Asunción, built in what was, at the time, the center of the city. In 1999, the station was closed and converted into a railroad museum. This steam locomotive was used around the time the railroad opened. The driving wheels were designed to be large, so as to travel fast on just a small amount of horsepower. In its heyday, the Paraguay Railway spanned a total of 367 kilometers. This museum preserves the air of that historical period. The main attraction of the exhibit is the sleeping car that was exclusively used by the nation's presidents. This sleeping cabin was actively used from the 1930s through the next half-century. This is the maintenance depot for the steam locomotives, located 80 kilometers from Asuncion. It was built at the peak of Paraguay's railroad boom in 1894. Even now, it is used for repairing the locomotives. Today, mechanics are working on maintaining wheels. Amazingly, steam generated by 3 wood furnaces provides the power for this maintenance depot too. The advanced technology used by this system was originally imported from England. The lathe is powered by steam and shaves the surface of the wheels. Maintenance of rails is also still performed in the traditional manner. In Paraguay, during summer, the temperature rises up to 40 degrees Celsius. Without maintenance, weeds would rapidly grow over the tracks. During breaks, workers drink a tea called mate. They pour water onto dried yerba mate leaves and drink the rich tea. This slightly bitter-tasting tea is a traditional indigenous beverage. The wood-powered steam locomotive, carrying crowds of tourists, will soon arrive at its destination. The passengers are absorbed by the opera music being performed. It has been 2 hours since the trip began. The train pulls into Aregua Station, which is the turning point. The crew disconnects the steam locomotive and starts to prepare for the return trip. First, they pour plenty of water into the tank. Then they remove the ashes from the boiler.
Voluntario fuera. Voluntario ahí.
On the platform, Act 3 of the play has begun. They depict a scene where villagers volunteer to fight in another of Paraguay's bloody wars. Once the actors reboard the train, it's ready to roll. The wood-powered steam locomotive slowly starts its return trip. It was this wood-powered train that helped drive the advancement of Paraguay throughout history. Even today, this uncommon train is much loved by its people and its nation.